Hey guys, it's Courtney. Today I'm here with a very quick video for an easy card using the Pet Goldfish stamp set by Hero Arts. And this is going to be a one-layer card. So I'm using a circle die and a pencil on a piece of Nina Solar White, and this is just for placement purposes only at this point. So I'm just tracing the inside of that circle die. Then I will place my panel into my MISTI just to make my stamping a little bit easier. I'm going to take, I think, if not all, almost all of the little fish images from this stamp set, and I'm just going to kind of arrange those within that circle. I am having some of their little tails kind of hang on the outside of the circle, and the rest will be kind of just scattered throughout, trying to pay attention to what direction the little fish are facing. I knew I wanted that one that's kind of turned and facing us, I guess, right there in the center. And once I had all of those arranged the way I wanted them, I'm going to go ahead and stamp these out with blackout ink by Ink on 3 because we're going to be Copic coloring pretty much the entire card. And I did stamp these twice just because this is the first time I'm using these stamps, or some of the stamps. I did cut out masks originally and then realized I didn't want to do that. So I did stamp these twice just to get a really good impression. Once those were stamped out, we're going to go ahead and erase those pencil lines. Now that I kind of have an idea of where my circle is, I feel okay to go ahead and erase those, because once you color over pencil lines, you'll never be able to get them up. So you want to make sure that you're erasing them not only on the outside of the circle, but where they kind of overlap the fish as well. Then I'm going to bring out that circle die again, now that I kind of know where that's supposed to be placed. And I'm going to take my B00, which is going to be the lightest blue that I use. And again, I'm just going to trace the inside of that circle die, but this time I'm going to go around my images. And this is just for placement. I'm going to end up using a darker blue, but this is just in case my marker slips or something like that. I can easily get rid of a B00. So once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and take my darkest blue, which is the B05, and I'm going to go ahead and basically trace around. No, I lie. First, I'm going to make my bubbles. We're going to get to the bubbles last, but I'm just basically drawing in circles all over my panel so that I know where my bubbles will be and I can kind of color around them for now. Now I'm making my bubbles now a little bit bigger than they probably will be, just because I know as I color in my background, I'm probably going to lose some of it. So I'm making them a little bit bigger than what I want. Now I'll go in with the B05, and I'm going to just trace the outside of that circle and then just flick inwards just a teeny tiny bit. I just want to have a little bit of variation of color in my little circle, and I'm just being careful not to go over my images. And next, once that was done, I'm going to bring in my B02, and I'm just going to extend these flicks out a little bit further. Now, some of these areas will reach where my little bubbles are, but for the most part, I'm not adding too much contrast here, or too much variation in color, I should say. I'm only flicking this out just a little bit to make that B05 blend out a little bit. Once that is done, I'm going to go ahead and bring in that B00 that we started off with, and I'm going to blend all of these areas out. Now I'm going to go around my images very carefully and around those bubbles. When you cover up a large area like this with any alcohol marker, more than likely you're going to have some streaking. So I always go over it twice. So once I get to the end, I'll go back over most of those areas, and this is where these bubbles kind of get a little bit smaller each and every time I kind of go over the same area, just because I'm not being overly careful here. I just want to get color in the background. So once all of my background was done, I'm going to use my colorless blender, because I did have some areas that kind of either bled or I just wasn't careful enough that went over my little fish. So I'm going to use my colorless blender to fix up those areas before we go ahead and color these little fish. And then we'll move right into the coloring of them. I'm only going to show you the coloring of 2 of them because I used the same color combination and I pretty much colored them the same way. So I'm going to start off with my lightest color to map out my darkest areas, and I'm pretty much using the lines within the illustration to kind of guide me as far as where my shadows should be. And here's a quick break. I think this is when New Kids on the Block came on. I listen to music when I craft and I kind of got a little excited. So there was a little bit of a pause there. So next I'm going in with my darkest color and going over those same areas that we had mapped out. This little fish is kind of curved. So right there in the center of his little belly, I guess it would be a little bit darker where his body is curved. Blending that out with the 2 midtones a little bit further each time and just leaving a highlight for that Y35 again, and I'll just blend the rest of those colors out. Now, I'll like I said, I'll show you one more, but use the same color combination. This one's shaped a little bit different. His tail is very, I don't want to say fluffy, but there's a lot to his tail. And I'm coloring this very similar to the way I would color flower petals, where one piece of his tail is kind of hanging behind another. That would cast a shadow, so that area would be a little bit darker. So you can see at the very tip of his tail, there's one piece that's kind of behind that larger piece in the front. So I'm just going to kind of trace where that one overlaps to make that a little bit darker so that it will give it some dimension. Also, he's got that thing on top of his head. I don't really know what that's called. Again, should have Googled that before I did my voiceover, but I am creating a shadow around that, being that part would be raised up a little bit. That would cast a shadow on the rest of his body. And then finally, again, going in with that Y35 and blending all of those areas out. Now, again, I wasn't all that careful, and I did have some of my areas kind of go beyond the fish themselves. So I'm going to bring back in my B00, and being this is such a light color, I can kind of use this as my colorless blender to kind of push that yellow or orange back to where it's supposed to be. So on to the bubbles. I'm going to show you all of them, but I'm going to show you just a few in real time. I'm taking my C3 and I'm just tracing the outside of the circle just on the bottom part. So a half a circle on the bottom. Then I'm going to take my C1 and go around the entire circle, B05 on the top, B02 in the middle, and B00 on the bottom. And it doesn't look like much now, but once you add that little tiny speck of white gel pen, it actually looks 3D. So again, going in with that C3 on the bottom portion of that circle, going around the entire circle with the C1, just a little bit of that B05 on the very top, blend that out just a tiny bit with the B02, then the B01, and sometimes I am leaving a little bit of white on the bottom of that circle as well, and then again bringing in just a speck of that gel pen, and that's what makes it shiny and 3D. So some of these bubbles are pretty tiny, so you're just going to have to basically touch the very tip of your marker in order to make sure that you get all 3 of those colors of blue. It is important that you have some variation of the color within the bubble, or else you're just not going to get the dimension that you're looking for. So again, each time finishing off with that white gel pen, making sure that that's dry before, putting my hand on it like I've done several times before. So here I'm just going to speed things up, but I did the same thing with all of these bubbles, but I wanted to show it to you just in case I know it's kind of a lot to kind of speed through, so I want to make sure that you guys can see everything in case you want to try this. But like I said, for some of those larger bubbles, I did leave a little bit of white on the bottom of the circle. So I went in with the B05, 02, 00, and then the very bottom, I just left white. So, and that will give it even more dimension. For the teeny tiny ones, I just didn't have room to do that, which is fine. And you'll see here that I'm not getting all that much contrast here. They don't look like bubbles, but as soon as I go in with that white gel pen, they just pop off the page and they actually look 3D. So just finishing up these bubbles now, and once that was done, I'm going to go ahead and move on to my sentiment. And this is from that same stamp set, and I'm going to be stamping this with black dye ink by Simon Says Stamp, which probably you guys know this is my favorite ink for sentiments. And I'm just going to stamp this straight down. I'm not going to do anything fancy here. I did take that darkest blue to kind of fix up my circle a little bit where my colors bled a little bit, just to make it look more like a perfect circle. I know that it's not anymore, but just to kind of give the illusion that it has, you know, perfect lines. So once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and finish off the card just to add a little bit something to the bottom. I'm going to bring out some Nuvo drops. These are jewel drops, so they have a little bit of color to them, but they dry pretty much clear, and this is like a bluish color, and I'm just going to scatter a few of those around my sentiment. And that is it. That is the very, very, very simple card for today, guys. Thanks a lot for stopping by, and have a great day. Bye.